Okay, everybody, welcome to Film Media Department's After Effects workshop, Working with Masks, presented by Tatiana. Just as a reminder, this is being recorded. You guys are not able to speak, but you can type your questions in the chat. And if you have any questions, that's where you do it, or you can raise your hand. I will be just keeping an eye on it, but Tatiana will be running the workshop. So with that in mind, I hand it over to Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter. Before I begin, in the chat, there is a link for project files that we will be using. It's a Google Drive link, and if you follow the link, there are project files that you can download if you want to follow along with me. Let me share my screen, and I'll show you what are the assets that I just shared with you. So if you follow the link that I shared in the chat, there are a few still images, a few MOV clips, one color palette that I always like to create before I start working on a project, and maskproject.aep is the After Effects project that I shared with you. This project was created in 2018 version of Adobe After Effects. So if you have an earlier version, it won't open it, but if you have a later version, it will ask you to convert it. Just agree and say, yes, I want to convert it to a later version. You don't have to use the assets that I provided. You can just create your own. Okay, Peter resend the link to the Google Drive. It's currently in the chat. So while you're downloading all the assets, I will share my screen with you and tell you what we're going to do today. This is not, we have already had one of these intensives in the spring that was After Effects for beginners. This is like a second level. It's a little bit above the beginner level, but I will still walk over some basics of how After Effects works. Currently, I am in a default workspace. If you worked with other Adobe projects, Adobe programs, you know that all the workspaces can be customized. You can move those windows. If you open your After Effects and it doesn't look like the one that I'm sharing with you, you can go above into Window Workspace and hit Default. I'm working in a default workspace. On the bottom, you see the timeline. Timeline works, if you're familiar with Premiere, you know that that's where you build your sequence. In After Effects, sequence called composition. Basically the same thing, but just a different name. So on the bottom, there is a timeline. This is your composition panel. That's where we will preview everything that we will be creating today. On the left, it's a project panel. All the assets that you import will be here. If you're building your composition from scratch, there will be nothing here until you create something. There also won't be anything on your timeline. It will look empty. In each After Effects project, you can work simultaneously with several compositions. And in the project that I shared with you, there is this composition where we'll talk how to create shapes and what's the difference between shapes and masks. The next composition is we will talk how we can animate different masks and what properties the mask has and how to animate them using keyframes. The next composition is about revealing the text using the mask. Then we will talk how we can reveal the text on the video using exactly the same tool, just the mask. Just instead of the still image, I gave you a video image of the car moving and the text is being revealed. And finally, in the end, we will talk about different track mates and how you can use one layer to mask another layer. So how are you doing with downloading the project files? Just type in the chat if you need more time, or if you already downloaded them, if you were able to open them. The chat is silent, so you also don't have to use my assets. You can just start the composition from scratch, and I will walk you through how to do it. So the first one, we will start with making different shapes. So I will delete everything that I have here. When you just, oh, it's still downloading. Okay, I think we can allow people to talk, so just we don't spend time on typing. I will give a little bit more time so everyone can download the assets.
Okay, so I've allowed everybody to talk. I am going to ask that if you don't have questions, that you keep your microphone muted if you're not talking. Thank you.
So when you open your After Effects, if you're creating your own assets, you can just open the program and create a new composition. This window will appear that will ask you about how the aspect ratio of your video, of the frame rate. I will stick to HD 1920 by 1080, and the frame rate is 2997. When you work with animation, your frame rate can be any. You can work with 8 frames per second, 12 frames per second. I stick to 29.97 because usually that's the frame rate of the video that I'm applying my effects to. And if your animation is a part of the bigger project, you always have to match the aspect ratio and the frame rate to the frame rate of your bigger project. If you're just creating this animation as the separate file, then you don't have to think about it. You can just choose any frame rate that you think is appropriate. Generally, because animation takes a lot of time, you don't want to have a lot of frames because your computer will have a hard time rendering the files. So something like 24 frames per second can be a good choice. But again, as I said, I'm sticking to 29 because that's the frame rate of the video that I will be using. So you can create a composition, or if you downloaded my project, you can just open this first composition that's called masking. You will see all these shapes that I created here. You can either work with them, or you can select them and hit delete and try to create your own. That's what I'm going to do right now. First, I will select my color palette that I imported into the project to have a reference of the colors that I decided to work today with. And I go to Layer, New, Solid Layer. to create a background layer for my composition. If you worked with Adobe programs, you know that this is the eyedropper tool where you can select any color on the screen. And I will select this dark blue, medium gray. It tells me that's a medium gray. Looks more like blue to me. So now on my timeline, I have one layer, and that will be my background layer. On the top of the screen, you have your different tools. And we will be working with the rectangular tool and the pen tool and the text tool today. The rectangular tool and the pen tool we will be using to create shapes and masks. It's the same tool to create mask and shape. The only difference is if none of the layers is selected and I'm going to my rectangular tool, it creates a shape. And you can see that on the timeline, now I have two layers. My bottom layer is the background layer, and then I have the shape that I just created. I will use my move tool to move it a little bit to the side. I can change the scale of it. I can move, change the position. If I open the properties of my shape and I go to transform, I can see that there are properties like position that can be changed by changing these numbers or just grabbing and moving the shape. There is a scale that can be changed, scale down or scale it up. I can also change the scale by just dragging the corner of my shape. There is rotation. We can rotate the shape, and there is opacity. So from 0, which is 0 opacity, we don't see our shape at all, to 100, where it's fully visible. So these are the properties of the shape that I just created. You can see that the color is white because the fill color on the top set to white. I can set it to any color I want. Since I have my color palette, I will use the eyedropper tool to select the color that I prepared before. What other shapes can we make using this tool? If you have a mouse, you can right click on the, no, not right click. You can hold Alt and click through those shapes and they will be changing. So one is rectangular, we have ellipse, we have round rectangular, we have a polygon tool and the star tool. Let's try to make all of them. When I'm creating the shape, if I hold Shift, it will restrain the proportions of the shape. So I can make a perfect square. Also, if I simultaneously hold Command, it will create the shape from the center. First creates it from the top left corner, but if I hold Command, it will create the shape from the center. And by holding Shift, we can restrain the size. Sorry, not the size, but the proportion, the aspect ratio of the shape. Next, we have ellipse tool, and I will change the color to something like a yellow. And with ellipse, it's again using the mouse to drag it and create the shape. But if I hold Shift, it will create a perfect circle. Next one is a polygon. And if while I'm creating the polygon, I hit on my keyboard up and down, I can change between the amount of sizes that my polygon will have. So if you hit up on your keyboard, the arrow up, it will make more size, it will be like more round shape. And if you hit down arrow, it will your polygon will have less sides. And the next one is the star, and the same idea with the star. While you're creating it, you can hit up and there will be more, your star will have more corners, I guess. Points. The star will have more or less points. These are not all the shapes that you can create. You can also grab the pen tool, which is on the right from your polygon and rectangle tool. You can grab the pen and create any shape that you want using just the pen. If you ever worked with Illustrator, you know how the pen tool works. If you haven't, you can see that there are those little vertex. Every time I touch the canvas, little vertex is created, and later I can move it. In the beginning, all the vertices will be sharp, but if I hold Alt and click on them, they will become round. So with pen tool, basically you can create any shape that you want to. So now why I'm creating all these shapes when the workshop is about masks? The same way as the same tools as we use to create shapes, we will be using to create masks on other layers. So I will select my shape layer and I will delete it for now because I don't need it anymore. I will select my background layer and I will grab a rectangle tool and I will mask my background layer. So the difference between the shape and the mask depends on what is selected. If nothing is selected, it will create, After Effects will create a shape for you. If you select a layer and you use the shape tool, it will create a mask. So now, if I add another layer to make it clear what's happening, I will have two layers. One will be my background layer, and I will create a new solid layer. I'll select a different color. So the orange layer now on top, and my bottom layer is my background layer, and I will delete the mask from it that I created before. So I have two layers, one on top of another. I will select an orange layer and I will try to create a mask. Whenever you're working with the pen tool, it's very important to close the shape. Close means where you start to creating your shape, you have to come back to the same dot. And when you hover over the beginning of your shape, next to your mouse, to the pen tool, there is a little circle. It indicates that you are about to close the shape. So what happened now is my orange layer is masked. I don't see anything around it. I only see the part that I created a mask on. And below it, I see my background layer. If I click on the orange layer and I open it and I go into the masks and I select the mask, and again I'm opening, it's like a folder structure. We need to go all the way to the mask inside of the orange layer. You can see that the mask has its own properties. One is the feather, which means that the sides of the mask won't be that sharp if we're applying the feather on it. There is a mask opacity that we can make it invisible or more visible. And there is an expansion of the mask, which means it can get bigger or smaller. So these are the properties of the mask. We can also move mask around. Another thing that is important to say that on each layer, we can have several masks. For now, on the orange layer, I have only one, like a zigzag shape. I will grab my ellipse tool and I will make another mask. So now we have one orange layer and two masks. And if you open the properties of the layer and go to your masks, you can see that both of them have, the setting says add. Let's see what will happen if one of them will be subtract. And then I will move my mask on top of another mask. So one layer, two masks, we can either set them to add to each other, or we can subtract one mask with another mask. So it gives you more opportunities for creating different shapes. And you can add endless amount of masks on each layer. Another setting that you have next to your mask is inverted. It basically means that instead of cutting around the mask, you're cutting what's inside of the shape. So I will delete all my extra masks here. Just leave my one original zigzag. So if I hit invert, let me move the layer where it's supposed to be. So if I hit invert on the mask, it cuts a hole. And in its original state, it will just deselect everything around, illuminate everything around your mask. So now I will move forward to my next composition to show you how we can animate the mask's property. So the next one called changing mask properties. If you're working with my After Effects project, you can hit the open another composition. If you're working with your own assets, we will create everything now from scratch. And that's how it's going to look. So what we have is 3 different layers of different colors: dark blue, orange, and then pink. Each layer is on the top of another layer. If we didn't have any masks, it will be just three plain solid layers. And I will delete them to show you how to create it from scratch. I'm going to layer, new, solid. So that's the first layer, it will be our background. Then again, layer, new, solid. Let's have an orange one. And on top of it, we will create a new layer, new, solid pink. The top layer now is pink, and that's all we can see. Let's see what will happen if we grab the ellipse tool and create a mask. I'm holding Shift to constrain the proportions to make perfect circle. We have to be careful with what layer is selected, because if none of the layers would be selected, I will just create another shape on top of my layers, and that's not what I'm going to do. I want to select my top layer and then mask it. Now mask is not exactly in the center, and let's say I want it to be perfectly in the center. What helps is this little window underneath your composition panel. It says title and action save. And if you turn it on, it will create this grid for you to show where is the exact center of your composition. And it's very convenient. I'm using my arrows now to find the center of the composition. And since I found it, I can turn off my title and action save grid. I don't need it anymore. So now I created a mask on top of my pink layer. And in order to animate, I will create keyframes. If you know what the keyframes are, it's like a superpower of After Effects. You can select the starting point and then the end point, and After Effects calculates for you everything in between. So we don't have to move your shapes or your mask pixel by pixel. The program will just move it for you. Let's see how we can animate the mask properties. So I'm going inside of the pink layer, and then I'm opening mask, and what I need to find is an expansion. And if I move those numbers, you can see that the mask is expanding, or we can completely disappear it. But if I just move it, nothing is changing. So if I hit play, I moved it, but nothing changed. So I can make it bigger, I can hit play, but again, nothing is changing in time. It's not changing because we didn't activate the keyframes. Next to mask expansion and next to almost any property in After Effects, you can see the little stopwatch. I will turn it on now, and it lights blue. Blue indicates that it's you turned it on. The stopwatch activates keyframes. So now we can change them and they will be saved. So I will start here where I don't want to see my pink circle at all. So the mask expansion goes to minus. I disappeared it completely. Now I'm moving on the timeline somewhere to 10 frames. And I'm changing the numbers. I want my circle to take the whole space of the screen. And you see, if you activated the stopwatch, every time you're changing something in the properties, After Effects create the keyframes for you. So this little blue dot is the keyframe on your timeline. I will go to the beginning of the timeline and I hit space to preview. So the mask expands from there is no mask, and then it expands to take the whole layer. What we can do, for example, if for purposes of your animation, if you don't want to have a sharp edge, we can also add the feather. So it suddenly looks like my vision is bad, everything is blurry, but nothing is blurry, it's just the edge of the circle of your mask, it has feather. I don't like it, so I will say that I want my feather to be 0 pixels, but that's an option that you have. Now I want to show you that if you created a mask on one layer, you can always copy and paste it to another layer. So now we have a pink layer with the circle animated mask, and you don't want to waste time to create another mask on another layer and another mask on another layer. You can just select the mask, hit Command C to copy, or you can go to Edit and hit Copy. And then you go on a different layer, which will be the orange layer. And I will hit Command V to paste it. If you're working on the PC, it will be Control C and Control V, the same way as you copy and paste in any other program. So now what happened here? I will temporarily hit the little eye on the left of my timeline to make invisible the top layer. Let's see what's happening. So the orange layer now also have the mask animated, and we didn't do anything. We just copy the mask from the pink layer and we placed it on the orange layer. Now it's just for us, now I will bring the top layer visible again. I will hit a little eye on the left of the timeline. And if we open all our properties on the timeline and take a look at where are the keyframes, we see that the mask is animated on the top layer, and only later the orange layer is animated. That's why we don't see it, because it's simply hiding under the pink layer. So what we can do, a few things. Either we can rearrange layers, or we can, I will bring back the pink layer on the top. Or you can grab your keyframes and you can drag them. So the keyframes can be dragged and can be copied from one layer to another layer. So I'll just play it again. I have a question in the chat. I was supposed to be doing this on our own with After Effects while we're watching. If you're a beginner in After Effects and everything is a bit too advanced, you can just watch it now, and it will be recorded and posted on the website, and you can follow with the recording, so you can pause the recording later. If you're advanced in After Effects, you can try and just create your own masks following along with me. So what did we learn in this composition? That mask can be animated, and the mask can be copy and paste from one layer to another layer. And then you can add as many masks to the same layer as you want. So now I will move to the next composition, which will show us how to use mask to reveal a text. we can create this composition completely from scratch. And that's what I'm gonna do now. Maybe I will just save Gumby because I don't have enough time to create it again. By the way, the Gumby is created all from shapes, and I will show you how I did it. So this was the pen tool. I created a shape, and we can always move it and change it. Then I used ellipse tool to create eyes. Then I used pen tool to create the mask on Gumby's face, and 2 more little circles to create his eyes, to create pupils in his eyes. So we won't spend much time on this because it's not exactly masking. It's just making different shapes. So making composition from scratch again. I'm going to layer, new solid to create a background. And now I will use the type tool to type a text. Let's say, wear your mask. When you start typing anything in your composition, on the right, you should see the character window. If you don't see it for some reason, you can go to Window and find the character and bring it. So with the character tool, it's the same as in Photoshop or Illustrator or Premiere. You can change the size of your text. You can change the color of your text. You can change the font. Always having a hard time to pick a font. Okay, let's have something simple. We can move our text around by using the Move tool. And I will bring the Gumby back just to balance our composition, so it doesn't look that lonely here. Okay, we have a text, and so far it's not animation. It's the same thing you can create in Photoshop. So why are we using After Effects? In After Effects, we can animate anything, and I will show you how you can reveal the text using the mask. So since I'm revealing the text layer must be selected. I hit the text layer, and then I go to, I can either use the pen tool to create a mask or rectangular tool. Let's do rectangular. And I'm creating a mask on my text layer. Nothing has changed, simply because so far my mask is revealing the text. So if I move it, you can see that it's cutting it. Anything that will be outside of the mask will be invisible. And often in After Effects, when you work with the keyframes, you go backwards. So you find the moment on the timeline where you want to end up. Let's say at the 10 frames, I want wear your mask completely revealed. And then I will select my text layer. I will open it. And then I will find the mask. And I will open it. And what I'm looking for called mask path. And next to the mask path, I'm looking for a little stopwatch. to activate keyframes. So I found the mask path and activated the stopwatch. It means at 10 frames, my mask will be on this place. Now I'm going to the beginning of the timeline. I grab my move tool and I grab my mask and I'm moving it away. And you see, since we activated the keyframes on the layer, that every time when I change the position of the mask, the keyframe on the timeline will be created for you automatically. It will be there. You don't have to hit anything else. You just move on the timeline and you move your mask and the keyframe is there. So now we'll simply hit spacebar to preview. And I'll play it again. So the mask is moving and the text is being revealed. Looks not bad. However, I don't like that the mask cuts the words so sharp. So you can see, basically you can see the mask that it's moving. So what I will do now is I will open my mask settings and I will find mask feather that we used before today. And I will make the edges just a little bit blurry. I'll go back and I play it again. Now it looks like the text is appearing. However, we are not changing anything in the text. The text is there at the whole time. Nothing is changing with the text. The only thing that is changing is the mask that reveals the text. Are there any questions for this part? Because I will move to the next, where we're using the same technique just on the video. I'll show you how you can change the moving of the mask more precisely. Anyone thinks that I need to explain something about the revealing, how to reveal the text with the mask? Just type it in the chat if you want me to slow down. Okay, if not, then let's move on. You can always come back to the recording. I shared with you this video of the taxi that goes through, that moves from the left of the frame to the right of the frame. The video, depending on how powerful your computer is and how heavy is the video files, this one is not very heavy. However, when you work with the video, composition can grow fast and computer will slow down. What helps is on the composition panel, there is this little toggle between the quality of the preview that can be full, half, third, quarter. I will put it on third, which simply means that the preview will play on 1/3 of the quality. And that helps a lot when you're editing the video, when you're working with video in After Effects, because it can be really slow. Another thing that indicates that computer has problem rendering your video is this green line above the timeline. Whenever it plays with the real speed, the line is green. It means that this part of the video has already rendered, and that's how it's going to play. Sometimes if you're changing something, it will be red, yellow, or you won't see the line at all. Just give it a second to render. And what I will create is I will type NYC, and as the car is passing by, the text will be revealed. So I will delete everything now and create it from scratch so you can follow with me. So I'm bringing the video, the footage of the taxi. If it's in the project, just drag it on your timeline. If it's not in the project, you can drag it from any folder, even from your desktop. You can just simply drag and drop it on the timeline. Here is the video. You can see that my computer has problem rendering. It's not all green yet. Also, the video is a little bit bigger than my composition. So I will go into the scale. I will open taxi video. I will open the video, the properties of it, go to transform, find the scale, and just make it a little bit smaller. Not that much, but just to fit the screen. So now I can play it. Okay, we have our video as the background layer. It's the same thing as before. The background layer was just simply pink. In this case, the background is the video. So I will grab my type tool, text tool, hit somewhere on the composition and type NYC. I will select my text, go into the character, make the text white and a little bit bigger, and maybe change the font. Something like this looks good. Now I'm going to my selection move tool. The hotkey, I love to use hotkeys because it saves you a lot of time. You can always hit V to go to the selection tool. Let's say you were in a text tool, you were typing, and then you want to move it around. I just simply hit V. No, I don't. Yes, it's hard to go to the move tool from the text tool because it reads your V as the letter. So the text tool probably is the one tool where you can go using the hotkey. But from any other tool, you can always hit V, and it brings you here your selection tool to move layer around. Oh, okay. I have a comment in the chat that I have to click outside of the textbook. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's even simpler. Simple way to move it. So just moving outside of the text box. So now, let's see. I want the text to be revealed as the car is passing by. Thank you for the comment, Dina. I will grab the pen tool and I will select my text, and then I will hit the pen tool and I will create a mask around my text. So nothing is changing so far because we have to animate our keyframes. So I will open the text layer and I will find my mask. I will open mask property and I will find the mask path. And as I said before, we're going backwards. First, I will find the position where my mask fully reveals the text. And I want maybe my text even to be a little bit bigger. So I'm finding the place here where NYC is fully visible. I'm finding mask path inside of my text layer, and I hit the stopwatch to activate my keyframes. And as you can see, the little blue keyframe was already created on your timeline. That's where we will end. That's when NYC will be fully revealed. And then we're going backwards, somewhere a few frames back. And I make sure that my text is selected. Oh wow, look, I didn't close my shape for the mask. That's not good. So I'll grab the pen tool and I'll make sure I closed my mask. So I'm going a little bit backwards, and now I am moving my mask. It's like the text is hiding behind the car. So the question is, how do I open the mask option on the text layer? When you go to the text layer, there is a little arrow on the older version of After Effects. It looks like a little play button. It's like a triangle. So you hit on this arrow and it opens properties. And there should be text properties, masks properties, and transform properties. And you find the mask, and then you open it again. It's like folder inside of the folder inside of the folder. Okay, you don't see the mask, probably because you haven't created the mask on the text layer. So I'll go back. I will delete my mask. I'm finding the moment where the car fully reveals the text. Then I'm going to the pen tool, select the pen tool, and create the mask around the text. So your text layer needs to be selected. Then you go to the pen tool, you select them, you create the mask around your text. And then if you open the text layer, the mask should be there. You got it. Awesome. So let's move where we stop. And I opened the mask and I activated the stopwatch next to the mask path in the end. And now I'm going backwards a few frames. And here you have to be, you can be as careful as you want your animation to be. So if you want to be very precise, you can move every few frames. If you're on the lazier side, you can have just a couple adjustments and think that it's good enough. So you see I'm moving on my timeline backwards a few frames, and I'm adjusting my mask to create an illusion that the text is behind the car. And here in the end, I can just move I can move the whole mask. So there is no text. Let's see how it looks. In the end, not so good, because here the car already passed and the text is already revealed and the car hasn't passed yet. So let's adjust this moment. And you see, every time when I'm adjusting the mask, a new keyframe is created on the timeline. That happens because we activated the keyframes when we press the stopwatch, and now every time you make a slight adjustment, there will be a new keyframe. So be careful not to create extra keyframes accidentally somewhere, like something like this might be a mistake. It means that you have an extra keyframe that you were not intended to put there. You can always select it and just hit delete. So make sure you have just the keyframes where you need them. Looks not bad, but I don't like that again, the end of the mask is, the edges of the mask are so sharp that it looks like you can see that the mask is moving. So what I will do is I'm going to the mask feather and I'll just make it slightly blurry, somewhere like 20 pixels. Let's take a look. That looks much better. And After Effects will play for you. If you hit space, it will keep playing the playing composition over and over again. which is convenient because with animation, you don't always have time to take a look if you did a good job or not. So for example, here, I think my text reveals is too quick, so I'm going to move it a little. And I will delete the previous keyframe, just cleaning a little bit. Any question about this text reveal? Now, if I want to be even more careful, and if I wanted to look even more realistic, that the text is really behind the car, I won't go in all the details of this, but the idea is that you copy the layer, you can hit Command D for duplicate, Command D or Option D if you're working on PC, and then I will place the taxi layer on top. So I'll have, it's like a sandwich, the taxi, the text layer, and the taxi footage again. And instead of masking the text, what I will mask here, I will delete the mask from the text. I will select my taxi. I will select the car instead. I will mask the car instead. So now I will make other layers invisible to give you an idea of what's happening. So the top layer will be my car, and I will be moving the mask as the car moving. I forgot to activate the stopwatch, so nothing is changing. So I'm going to hit the mask path, the stopwatch next to the mask path, and then as the car moving, I'm moving my mask. This is a little bit advanced. You don't have to do it, but just showing you all the different options how you can play when you have layers of footage. So now I'll make other layers visible. Let's see what's happening. Again, not that clean because I didn't spend much time. You can always go back and adjust the position of your mask. So the same reveal, just two different ways how we got there. In the first one, we were masking the text. In the second one, we had two layers of footage and we were masking the car. Let's move on. Next thing that I will show you is how to use the TrackMate. So the TrackMate is a layer that controls the visibility of another layer. What I'm talking about here is, if you look on your timeline, where different properties of your layer on the right, you can see the mode. Wait, let me, first I will make it's invisible. Because After Effects is so complicated and every window has tons of sub windows, often we prefer to just clean your workspace and make some windows invisible. Let's say this is how the default standard layers will look like. You don't have anything, just the name and the parenting option. If you go all the way on the left bottom corner on the left, there is a window to expand different windows. So if you hit once, all these options will open with like a 3D layer, and yes, a lot of different stuff that we don't need to use now. And the second one will open the TrackMate. So you go on the bottom left of the After Effects window and you open the second one. It looks like a square on the top of a circle. And it will bring the TrackMate panel. So what does it mean to use the layer as a mask for another layer? I shared with you this footage of an ink, a drop of ink on the wet paper. So it's a black ink, white background. And what I will do is I will be using the TrackMate to transform this layer into the mask. So we won't use it anymore as the ink, we'll just use it as a mask for another layer. If you open the TrackMate options, what you have is AlphaMate and LumaMate, and also AlphaMate inverted and LumaMate inverted. Alpha refers to an alpha channel. If you know, there are 3 color channels, RGB, red, green, and blue, and alpha, which stands for a transparency of your channel, transparent channel. And Luma is referring to a pixel brightness of the layer on top of it. Since our ink is not, it's not a transparent layer, there is nothing transparent, it's just 2 different colors. If we select the AlphaMate, nothing will happen. It doesn't, the AlphaMate doesn't help us. What we will be using is LumaMate. And LumaMate controls, it takes, how to say, it analyzes the brightness of the layer on top. And the reason why I selected black and white footage, black and white footage is the best for track mating. No, you can select this, track mating, for track mates, because black is the minimum brightness and the white is the maximum brightness. So you have this contrast. So black will become invisible, and everything that is white will become 100% visible. Okay, you found how to open it. It's on the bottom left. There is a little toggle to open the TrackMate properties. So what I will do again is I will delete everything and I will create it from scratch. So we will need 2 layers, 2 different colors. I'll create layer. Your timeline needs to be selected when you are creating new layers. So I'm selecting my timeline. You can see it has a little blue outline around it. And I'm going to the layer, new, solid. Let's have something. Dark blue will be our background layer. And the new one, layer, new, solid. And the yellow will be on top. So the transition between them can be simple, just from one to another. But that's quite boring. And what we will do is I will import my ink footage on top. So now I have an ink footage and then 2 different colors on the bottom. And the TrackMate will be applied to my middle layer, to the orange layer that I have orange here. And the way how the TrackMate works, you always applying it to the layer that is on the bottom, under the layer that you want to become a mask. So in this case, I want my ink layer to become a mask, so the ink layer will be on top and the orange layer will be on the bottom. So I select the LumaMat, and you can see that the ink layer become invisible by itself. So we don't see the ink itself, It's just using the brightness of this layer to create a mask. So now I will play it. And I'll play it again slowly. So what happens is the orange layer is disappearing and it's revealing our background layer. And if I want to do the opposite, the invert version of what I just did, is I'm going to the track mate and I select Luma inverted. And now instead of disappearing the orange layer, it will create it. Using the brightness of our ink video. So that was the video. And that's how we used it as a mask. And in this example, I'm using just 2 colors because I don't want my computer to, I want my computer to work faster for this presentation. But instead of the colors, you can use photos, you can use 2 videos, and using the track mate to combine the footage from 2 different clips. So in the next composition, just as an example, I had 1 photo of the astronaut, and then I had another photo of the space, and I brought my ink on top, and I did exactly the same thing. I selected the Luma matte on the space photo, and if we hit play now, what happened is a reveal of the bottom layer using the mask. When both layers are moving and when it's video, that looks pretty incredible. Just to give you an idea of how it can look, I'll change the scale. Again, I'm using keyframes to change the scale of both photos. So now both images are moving. It can be video, and one is being revealed through another one. That's I think about it. Anyone has any questions about TrackMates or just about anything? We still have a couple of minutes. I can go over any part that wasn't clear. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. The recording will be up in a few days. I've just got to get it from my CIT. So thank you, Tatiana. Great workshop.
Thank you.
Number 2 in the series. All right.
Yes.
Everyone, have a great day. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy. Bye.